Welcome to the Juice Box with Juice Springsteen, covering the week that was in professional wrestling. And welcome to another special edition of the Juice Box. It is WrestleMania week, and we've already had the Sip Series episode featuring Wrestling for Sale earlier this week being released, so I hope you guys have gone out and enjoyed that episode. If you're in Philadelphia this weekend, of course, the Wrestling for Sale Vintage Wrestling T-shirt pop-up will be happening Friday, 12 noon to around 3:30 at the Blind Barber location in Philadelphia. All the details are in the Sip Series episode featuring Wrestling for Sale, so hopefully you guys check that out. Today, however, is another special episode here for WrestleMania week on the Juice Box. It is none other than a staple here at the Juice Box, Triple Threat Theater Volume 4, what the world is listening to. This is the WrestleMania-centric episode of Triple Threat Theater. Myself, Donnie, and Josh Cross diving way deep into the archives of WrestleMania history and lore here on the Juice Box, discussing a plethora of matches, moments, good, bad, and ugly. Just briefly, we will be discussing the best and worst of the WrestleMania matches over the years, where I particularly had WrestleManias 1 through 19, and I gave my 5 best and worst matches. Donnie did the same with WrestleManias 20 through 29, and Josh did the same for WrestleManias 30 through 39. Great time discussing that. A lot of interesting matches that we've selected and discussed. Additionally, another segment is the WrestleMania Dream Matches that never happened. We all brought forth a couple of matches that never happened for whatever reason, or we felt should have happened, and some that still could happen in theory, but we get into all that as well. And then last but certainly not least, Donnie, Josh, Cross, and myself dive into our top 5 personal favorite WrestleManias of all time. For one reason or another, we select our 5 favorites, some chronologically, some, just in order of when they, top to bottom, 1 to 5, whichever. But we all go through our favorite specific WrestleManias for whatever reason, whether it was if we were there, whatever we watched, we enjoyed the most, best matches, just historical significance altogether. So a lot of ground covered this week on Triple Threat Theater Volume 4. I'm looking forward to Triple Threat Theater Volume 5, hopefully earlier in the spring, maybe before summer. It'd be nice to, get that out there. We'll see as topics go forth what we want to come up with as a team here on the Juice Box, because this show is for the fans, by a fan. And I had some of my friends that were fans come in for Triple Threat Theater, as they always do. So it was a great time discussing with them. Before we get into it, as always, on Twitter, follow me at Juicy Steen, Instagram at Juicy Wrestling Closet, juicysteen.podbean.com, Apple Podcasts. You can listen to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify as well. Of course, this is now on YouTube. The audio, of course, is on YouTube to listen to as well, at Juicy Steen. A lot of content will be eventually posted. All archived episodes of the Juice Box are on YouTube as we speak, and our interns were working very hard to get that there. And any random videos, as the world of pro wrestling progresses here with the Juice Box, they will be posted on youtube.com/JuicySteen. Potentially some videos this weekend from WrestleMania weekend in Philly, where yours truly will be, on the streets at certain events, getting some fan interaction potentially, getting some, insight into what's been going on all weekend, some reactions from night one, previews of night one or night two, reactions from anything going on, any of the events I'm going to be attending, as well as, correspondents that are, some guys that are always on this show, Josh Eisenberg, Josh Cross, some others will be in Philadelphia. So I will hopefully be getting in touch with them as well and just getting a full gauge of the buzz surrounding WrestleMania weekend. Not sure how that's going to eventually come to fruition, whether that's an episode next week after WrestleMania, but there will be content for sure. So keep up to date with the YouTube, the podcast, everything in between. So without further ado, here's Triple Threat Theater 4, what the world is listening to right here for WrestleMania week on the Juice Box. It's WrestleMania week here in the Juice Box, and I've got the two wrestling fan debate crew here. Donnie, Josh, the collective is Triple Threat Theater alongside yours truly, Juice Springsteen. It is a big WrestleMania week, WrestleMania 40 this weekend in Philadelphia, and what better way to discuss WrestleMania and its memories, its legacy, some of our favorite matches we haven't gotten to see over the years that we should have seen, and our top five personal favorite manias. This is going to be the fourth installment of Triple Threat Theater, what the world is listening to, a playoff of WrestleMania 4, of course. And inside the Juice Box for this special occasion for Triple Threat Theater Volume 4, we have Donnie and Josh Cross, the guys who've been along the ride this entire time for Triple Threat Theater, and wouldn't want to celebrate WrestleMania with anybody else here. So, Josh, Donnie, how you guys doing today?
I'm doing great, Juice. I'll be going to both nights of Mania this year, night 1 and night 2, and looking forward to a great time in Philly this year.
Donnie, how about you, man? You looking forward to this WrestleMania?
I'm doing great, bro. It's good to be back. I'm excited for the topics today. It's going to be a unique episode. I'm more excited for this year's WrestleMania than I have been for the last few, or maybe even for the last maybe 10 years or so. The card's kind of stacked. The build-up's been pretty good, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I would say the same. I think it's a pretty stacked card thus far, barring any additional matches. Before we dive into the classic, discussion of WrestleManias, which I'm going to discuss our three topics after we briefly discuss this next thing. The Hall of Fame happening this Friday. As of recording, I'm going to announce these five inductees, so we will discuss briefly just what your guys' thoughts on, or maybe, I know some of the thoughts that Josh might have on some of these guys would be nothing, but that's why we're here in the Juice Box to discuss what we do know. Muhammad Ali in the celebrity wing, the U.S. Express, Mike Rotunda and Barry Windham coming in as a group, Thunderbolt Patterson, Bull Nakano, and the one, the only Paul Heyman getting inducted this year in the WWE Hall of Fame. Josh, when I say those five particular names, is there one that sticks out in general as bigger than the rest, or is there one that sticks out to you seemingly maybe shouldn't be there? What are your thoughts on this year's Hall of Fame, where we stand right now?
Probably the one that stands out the most for me right now, at least, is Paul Heyman. He's probably the greatest manager in wrestling history. And he's most notable for his work with ECW, obviously. I'm so happy the ECW guy is finally getting into the Hall of Fame. Granted, I would like to see an actual wrestler get in. I believe Paul Heyman 100% deserves it. I think all five inductees deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. I really wasn't aware of Bull Nakano before her induction. But after what I've read up about her, I believe she definitely deserves to be in. And the same thing as Thunderbolt Patterson. I have not even heard of Thunderbolt Patterson before he was announced. But reading up on him, I also agree that he definitely deserves to be in, especially in his role in attempting to form a wrestler labor union. I know that has not been done yet, and I believe that was a big part of him being blackballed by the wrestling industry at the time. But I'm glad that he's finally getting the recognition that, from what I've read, he deserves to have.
Yeah, I think you're pretty spot on there. The group so far, again, as of this recording, I think is pretty strong. Of course, you had to have an ECW representative for Philadelphia, and the fact that it's Mania 40, it's kind of bigger than ECW, and Paul Heyman being involved in the thick of the main event storylines right now, I think really also adds some cachet to the Hall of Fame in particular this year. Donnie, you're more of a classic wrestling fan in the sense of broader horizons. That's not to say Josh isn't, but I know you were more aware of Bull Nakano as a wrestler growing up. So just your thoughts on the five inductees selected thus far, and yeah, just in general, what are your thoughts on all of them?
I'm happy with the Hall of Fame class this year. A lot of what Josh said about Paul Heyman, I agree with. If he's going to be the headliner for this class, I think that, fits the bill since we're going to be in Philadelphia, the city where ECW was practically born and bred. Muhammad Ali and Bull Nakano, for me, are long overdue inductions. I feel like Bull Nakano should have been in a long time ago. She had probably, her and Alundra Blaze had the 2-3 best women's matches you can go back and find during that era of women's wrestling. That's probably the top women's rivalry of the time. Muhammad Ali being part of the first WrestleMania, he should have been in the celebrity wing before some of these other guys. But, I mean, it is what it is as far as that goes. U.S. Express getting in, it's nice to see them going as a tag team, especially knowing what they accomplished as individual wrestlers. Thunderbolt Patterson, kind of like Josh, I don't really know too much about him per se, but I will say that, with the Wrestlers Union and everything, I'm glad that that's happening for him. And the one glaring omission for me with the Hall of Fame is Bray Wyatt. I think you guys know my feelings on that as far as everybody else does. He should be in this year, but like I said before, if Heyman's going to be the headliner, then I understand why, they might be trying to wait it out maybe till next year, but we'll see what happens. There's still people to be announced, so we don't know the whole class yet.
Yeah, very true. As of this recording, which is about 2 weeks or so out from WrestleMania, we potentially could have one, maybe two more inductees. It's also reported maybe that the Legacy Wing makes a return, which is kind of based for those, particularly the ones that are not with us anymore, but should be recognized as a member. I believe they last did that in 2021, but had not done it the last 2 years. But I mean, I was digging through the Legacy Wing, and I did see some guys and girls that honestly could have been their own inductee. Luna Vachon, Bruiser Brody, Wahoo McDaniel. A couple of them just really stand out, and even Dr. Death Steve Williams, I could argue. There are just some that I felt that you're only putting them in because you might have forgotten to put them in, or you waited too long for whatever reason to put these people in, and now it's like, well, we can get them in. They're technically Hall of Famers, but we can't give them a stage presence, and maybe we don't know anybody that can come through. But for one reason or another, that's I still think it's a nice little piece of the Hall of Fame to at least get some members in that may not have been recognized before, or especially with this current regime under the Triple H regime here. I think you're going to see a lot more interesting, unique names to the Hall of Fame that we might have never thought possible before. So we'll see how it all shakes out as we get closer to WrestleMania and the Hall of Fame this weekend. But guys, we are here for a special reason. This is Triple Threat Theater. This is where we banter, argue, discuss, whatever you want to call it, about just interesting topics that we've discussed ahead of a certain event or a certain pay-per-view. And with WrestleMania 40 happening this weekend, 40 years of WrestleMania, so many moments, so many memories. There's a reason this is around. Like, there's a reason WrestleMania has hit 40 events. I know UFC is about to hit UFC 300, but they do a show every month, every week. It's kind of muddied in that regard. This is 40 years in a row of one huge event with other events, peppered throughout. And this is the tried and true big show for WWE. And I wanted to celebrate it in a way with you guys that we could honor the past, celebrate what we've loved about the past while, we just get ready for the future of WrestleMania. So I gave 3 specific topics, and they go as follows. We're going to do the best and worst of the WrestleMania 40 matches, and each one of us has been given a select segment of WrestleManias. Myself, I'm doing the first 19 WrestleManias. Donnie has the 20 through 29 WrestleManias, and Josh is doing 30 through 39, and that includes both nights of the last 3 Manias that have been multiple nights, where we pick the 5 best and our 5 least, worst or least favorite, however you want to view it, matches from those particular time frames. Then we're also going to go, and of course we're going to discuss them. We're going to do WrestleMania dream matches that never happened. I tasked Josh and Donnie with this, where they have both come up with 3 potentially different, maybe some line up the same. We'll see. That'll be interesting. Matches that never happened that should have. I'm not going to mention them now because I think my co-host today will. There's some that are very obvious and glaringly never happened. Maybe they happened somewhere else after the fact, but they never happened at the show of shows for whatever reason or another. So we'll discuss that. And then to close it out, we will do our top 5 personal favorite WrestleManias. I know the guys did it potentially in order of their 5th favorite to their first favorite. My particular 5 aren't in order of best to worst, or, in order of the top 5. It is when they took place. So I will just go throughout that. Maybe if I land on one that they liked, we could discuss at the same time. So without further ado, let's dive into the best and worst 5 matches from our particular WrestleMania eras. I'm going to start it off. I had WrestleManias 1 through 19. Do you think we should start with the best or worst, Josh, Donnie? What do you think we should start with? Best or worst?
I think we should definitely do the worst first. Just get the garbage out of the way quick,
All right. We'll do the worst WrestleMania matches, in my opinion, from WrestleManias 1 through 19. Now I'm going to bring up the match. I'm going to bring up a little bit about it maybe, and then you guys chime in if you agree or disagree, and we'll go from there. All right. And this is, and I took this not in any particular order. It's just if they're in the bottom 5, they're in the bottom 5 for a reason. It doesn't have to be ranked. So in this list, absolutely, WrestleMania 9, Undertaker, Giant Gonzalez. Look, I know this match had to happen for the spectacle of Giant Gonzalez. Unfortunately, the suit looked goofy on him. He was more imposing as Elegante in WCW. He was not really long for this world as a massive, massive man. But this is just not the best Undertaker WrestleMania match. It's his 3rd WrestleMania match that he had, previously defeating Snuka and Jake Roberts, but getting Giant Gonzalez in Las Vegas, it's not great at all. It's a DQ finish. It's really lame. The only thing I will give this match credit for, there's 2, it's all Undertaker, but it's 2 parts of it. First of all, the entrance. Undertaker's entrance of this show is so damn cool. He comes out with I want to say it's like a crow or just a I don't know. It's a blackbird. I don't know, but it looks devastating. I don't have it pulled up with me right at the moment, but he comes out on this thing, and it is just a very eerie looking entrance, considering Vegas in the daytime, in the afternoon, is such a awesome sight for WrestleMania, and you get this very dark, eerie character arriving to the ring. And then the other part I liked is after the match, after Taker gets the chloroform in his face and Giant Gonzalez gets DQ'd, Undertaker makes his way back out through the entranceway looking possessed as hell to try to get back at Giant Gonzalez, and I always thought that visual was really cool. Josh, do you agree with me here? Is this arguably Undertaker's worst WrestleMania match?
It definitely 100% is. I think the no DQ finish kind of I don't want to say ruins the streak, but it definitely kind of like puts like an asterisk or kind of like makes it like an outlier of some sorts. I do agree with you about the entrance. I like that whole entrance. I'm pretty sure he came out with like some type of bird or something. If I stand corrected, I thought that was really cool. But Giant Gonzalez he was horrible in the ring. It was a horrible overall match. It was Undertaker's worst WrestleMania match by far.
Donnie, what are your thoughts on Giant Gonzalez and Undertaker at WrestleMania 9? Is it as bad as Josh and I are saying, or, do you give it some credit?
No, it's justified being on the list. It's pretty bad. It's definitely Taker's worst WrestleMania match. Like you guys said, the best part about it was probably the entrance. I'm pretty sure he had a vulture when he came out. I could be wrong. It could have been a crow, but
Yes, it was a vulture. Thank you, Donnie. Jesus, I don't know why I'm hosting this show. Continue.
and the venue just looked super cool being in the Vegas Coliseum. Like that's one of my favorite venues for a Mania ever. So I agree with you guys though. Gonzalez couldn't really work. He probably shouldn't even have been in the ring with the Undertaker, but for the visual, I understand why they did it. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, it was just for the spectacle, and it did what it did. It needed to be, done at that time. Maybe I look back on it negatively because they doubled down on that match and did it again at SummerSlam '93 in the Rest in Peace match. So that might have been a little bit too far, but I mean, I enjoyed the overall program of Gonzalez coming in and being this unbelievable monster, but it was just never going to work, I think, to the level that WWE would have wanted. All right, let's get into another bad match. I'm just going to hesitate to say bad matches because these are just my least favorite finishes, or like these matches get praised and I don't see why. So that's where we're kind of going to go here. I'm going to go with another match finish from WrestleMania 9, and that is the combination of Bret Hart, Yokozuna, and once the match ends, Hulk Hogan plays his creative control card. I'm looking at you, Bash at the Beach 2000, and inserts himself into a title match with Yokozuna and walks away as champion. Again, I will give credit to the moment. Hogan wins the title, the crowd pops huge. And it's like out of nowhere, and people are like, what the hell is going on? But, in retrospect, when you look back on it and you realize, like man, he really didn't want to be left out of the main event scene. He'd been in the main event of the first 8 WrestleManias. And even though he wrestled at WrestleMania 9, he could not stay away from the main event. So that whole abomination is a part of this as well. Donnie, I know you said you liked the Vegas look, but did you like the Vegas ending?
Absolutely not. I don't understand why they decided on this. You're probably right. It was probably Hogan's creative control that came up with this ending. But give Yokozuna his moment, man. He just defeated Bret Hart in the main event of WrestleMania. Why did Hogan have to come out there, do his whole shtick, and then he pinned Yokozuna, I think, in less than a minute. So that completely just derailed everything that happened before that. You had the dirty finish with Mr. Fuji throwing the salt in Bret's eyes, and you did all that to protect Bret Hart, but then you did nothing to protect Yokozuna. Not to mention the fact that Hogan's match earlier in the night was awful with Money Incorporated, and Brutus Beefcake came out with that weird metal mask he had on his face because they hit him in the face with the briefcase or whatever. It was just bad booking for Hogan all around that night.
Josh, what are your thoughts on Hulk Hogan inserting himself into the main event at WrestleMania 9?
I think it was just selfish of him because we all know he booked himself to win that title. He used his creative control 100%. It was probably I don't want to say the top of Hulkamania, but it was he was so pretty there at the time. It was Hogan's last year in the company, so he probably had vast amounts of pretty. The match itself between Yokozuna and Bret Hart wasn't that, probably because of most the card Outsiders versus the Head Shrinkers was pretty bad.
Yeah.
But that the post match with Hogan basically ruined the whole pay per view, in my opinion.
Yeah, I tend to agree there. All right, let's go to another bad. This is a combination. This is not necessarily a bad match. This is a combination of why a match should not have main evented, considering the match that was previous. And that is Triple H and Chris Jericho main eventing WrestleMania 18 when it followed arguably one of the greatest WrestleMania matches of all time between The Rock and Hollywood Hogan. Why they thought that two of the biggest stars in the history of the business would not, leave the fans breathless and unable to, really care about current storyline matches, especially when it's pretty predictable that Triple H was going to win that main event. It just baffles me. I mean, when you watch Rock and Hogan, it's unbelievable. It's an atmosphere that I don't know how many matches can even come close to that, if top at all. But the fact that it was not the main event and, Triple H and Jericho were, I've never liked that. Josh, what are your thoughts on the placement and just the terrible idea to have Triple H and Jericho close out a show where Rock and Hogan are on it?
You have the greatest superstar of the 1980s and probably the second greatest superstars of the late 90s, early 2000s facing off against each other, and you put them third to last on the card. That match was bigger than any title match. I don't know if it was Triple H also using some creative control that he had in order to put his match last, but any person with a brain back then should have told you that Rock Hogan should be main eventing. Now, I'm glad they learned their mistake from that and they put Cena, Rock on last for WrestleMania 28 and for 29. So maybe that could be the silver line of this whole incident. They learned from their mistakes.
All right, and Josh, I would hope that you maybe fix your audio. Just check the audio levels there. You kind of lag out in and out there, but I'm sure you'll fix it. Donnie, do you think it's an abomination that Hogan and Rock didn't go on last at Mania 18, or Josh and I just making too much of this?
So just for clarification, you have this on your list just because of where the match is placed and not the match itself, correct?
Yeah, Triple H and Y2J shouldn't have been where it was. It should have been Rock and Hogan.
Okay, I just want to make sure I got that straight so I don't disagree with you on that point, because the match itself was actually pretty solid. If you were able to like catch your breath from the match beforehand, like if you were actually able to sit down and pay attention, which most people weren't because they booked the main event in the match before, anybody that's booking at that time, booking 101, like should have known the title match goes before Rock and Hogan. Like that match is bigger than the title. I'm sorry. It's Hogan's first WrestleMania match, I think, in maybe it had to be close to 10 years since the last time WrestleMania 10, I think, was his last WrestleMania.
No, it was 9. We just talked about it.
WrestleMania 9. So yeah, almost 10 years, and then you don't even put him in the main event. The crowd was hot for him. You could tell they booed The Rock at the beginning of the match and were all about Hulk Hogan until toward the end. So I agree that the match placement was definitely not correct. They should have went the other way with that one.
All right, and we've got two more here. Not sure how much you guys are going to be able to contribute to this particular match, but I'm going to do it anyway. It is Hogan and Andre from WrestleMania 4. The match at WrestleMania 3 is arguably one of the most important matches in the history of pro wrestling. We all know what it did for the business. We all know what it did for the WWE, for Hogan, for Andre, their legacies. They did have an interaction again, Survivor Series 87 later that year. But once we flip to the next year, WrestleMania 4, Atlantic City, New Jersey, and we have the tournament to crown a new World Wrestling Federation champion. The first round match has Hogan and Andre, and clearly it was set up to, sell the pay-per-view. You get a one-on-one match. This matters, and it turned out to be a double DQ and Ted DiBiase getting a bye, which ended up working in the favor of the storyline because Ted DiBiase ends up getting into the finals, and he loses to Savage, of course. But leading up to that was Hogan losing the title to Andre because of the referee, the dual referees that Ted DiBiase paid off. So the story's all synced up from February to Mania 4. So that all lined up. But when you get to the match and it's a non-finish, and they never really have an interaction again outside of SummerSlam, the Mega Powers versus the Mega Bucks, but not one-on-one. You never really got that chance to have the magic again. So it was just disappointing. But Josh, do you have any recollection of this particular rematch, or no?
I vaguely remember it. I don't think I've watched WrestleMania 4 in years. I understand why they did it, because they wanted to put Savage over at the end, and it was a way to get these both these superstars out of the way in order for Savage to advance to the final eventually, and have more adversary whenever he faces Ted DiBiase, who got that bye in the semis. Outside of that, I really don't have much to add to my commentary for that match.
And that's fair. Hey, that's fair. That's fair. That's why we have 3 guys on here, and that's why I selected the first 19 Manias, because I knew I could hold my own with these, and you guys have more of a bread and butter with the more recent Manias. Donnie, do you have any thoughts, comments on the WrestleMania 4 rematch?
I feel like this match kind of gets forgotten just because of the magnitude of WrestleMania 3. So I understand why you want to run it back and do it again, just because of the box office that was the first attraction. But you also have to remember, a lot of that came from the allure of Andre. Like, I don't think Andre had been defeated in WWE on TV up until that point. And if he had, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure Hogan was like the first person to beat him decisively clean. And then you could see in that match, even Andre was like toward the end, like we were going down to the last days for Andre in ring. So to come a whole year later and expect Andre to go out and put on a similar performance, it's just, the match probably shouldn't have happened. They probably should have booked something else. I mean, I personally would have liked to see maybe Hogan and Savage in that main event of WrestleMania, but they did it, and it is what it is. It's not the greatest match in the world. It's not the worst match in the world, but
yeah, it's what it is. I honestly might revisit it now that we're discussing it, just kind of see how it looks with context of where everything ended up, because maybe they thought we'll get another one-on-one with them at some point, but they ended up not doing that, of course. All right, let's get to I don't know if this is a controversial choice, but I know some people do agree with me, at least in some ways, and I can't deny the historical significance of the match I'm going to select here as my last least favorite or worst, or dare I say overrated WrestleMania match. So if that gets your juices flowing, you know where I'm going with this. But a match that I think has gotten so much praise, so many eyeballs, so much love for it going back. I think the match is okay. I like that they tried this, and I just I don't know. Realizing what you could have done in retrospect, I think you could have made the match better. I am talking about WrestleMania 12, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Iron Man match, 60 minutes in change, because they go to overtime for the WWF title. However, this match, it's viewed by a lot. This is Shawn Michaels' moment. He wins the title. He came up short at WrestleMania 10. He came up short at WrestleMania 11. In marquee matches and 10s, solidified Shawn Michaels as a superstar. But, he doesn't win at Mania 11, and he wins the Rumble at 96. He has Jose Lothario. You go against Bret Hart. It's at the Anaheim Pond. 60-minute Iron Man match. I like the idea. I like the training montages. I like a lot of the in-ring work. But to me, I felt that the match lacked an intensity of, my biggest hang up on this match is that it went 1-0. I know that that's a on purpose decision. No one could get a fall for well over 60 minutes. But to me, I think if you're doing an Iron Man match, I think the money is in a high scoring affair, a la 6'5" Cena and Randy Orton at Bragging Rights '09. I just love having a high scoring, like, you're down 1-0. So you're down 1-0, but you hit the guy with a chair, you get disqualified, but then you pin him, so it's tie, or it's 2-1, and then you might get an advantage because he's hurt. Like, there's so many ways to do falls in a 60-minute time frame that I think they missed an opportunity by just going 0-0 the whole match. And I know because they tried it for the first time here at WrestleMania that, fans aren't going to see it like that. They're just going to be captivated by the work and how close it is. And no one could get the fall and no one had an advantage. And it even went to extra innings, quote unquote, of course, where Shawn Michaels hits the sweet chin music and the boyhood dream came true. But I know some people became fans with this match, or they were solidified as huge fans because of this match. And I know people love this match as a Shawn Michaels fan, maybe not as a Bret Hart fan because Bret loses, but I can't deny that the match is a solid in-ring match. I just feel like for what it is, it gets way overhyped. And I think Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart have much better WrestleMania matches than this. Donnie, what are your thoughts on WrestleMania 12, Iron Man, Shawn versus Bret?
I'll give it to you. This is a bold choice. This is bold. So this is going to be the first one I disagree with you on. And not so much like I agree with you from the fact that Shawn and Bret both have better WrestleMania matches than this and is a little bit overrated of a match. But I'm going to look at it from a different perspective. Like, you don't like it because there's only one finish that takes place throughout the whole match. And I understand that, you like the high scoring affairs Iron Man matches, but I like how it differentiates from that. I feel like most of the Iron Man matches we see now, or even after this, like, you have a ton of falls. And this is one of those rare Iron Man matches where you only have one fall throughout the whole thing and you get the overtime. The ending I thought was pretty good the way that they did that. But you also have to look at it like this. Were Shawn and Bret really going to put each other over multiple times in one match? They didn't even want to do it once, let alone multiple times. So that's probably why you end up with the overtime finish to begin with. So I think it's a solid match. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorite WrestleMania matches, but I wouldn't put it on the list in this particular era of WrestleManias in the worst.
Josh, what are your thoughts on WrestleMania 12? Bret, Shawn, Iron Man. Am I crazy?
Yes, Juice, I think you are crazy. I think this is one of my favorite matches from that era. I actually do like the fact that it's 1-0, because the further you get into the match, the more high stakes each pin attempt becomes. I do like the ending when Bret applies a sharpshooter to Michaels and he doesn't tap out as time expires. I think that's a really exhilarating moment in the match that gets you on the edge of your seat to see, will he tap or won't he tap? However, I understand how most people want to see a high scoring Iron Man match, but for me, I like the low scoring ones more because it seems like every pin attempt, they're going to get a fall in an Iron Man match nowadays. So I definitely appreciated the low scoringness of this match. But to reiterate, yes, you're crazy, Juice.
Well, I'm glad you came around to that last final point. I know it's a maybe not popular choice, but I stand by it. I'm not even saying that the match is bad. In fact, I like the match. And I get that they wanted the first high-profile Iron Man match to have the 1-0 score, and it does. It adds to the stakes. It adds, intrigue and drama, and I get that. It's just not what I would have done had I had the pen then. But I have the straw now, and I'm going to give you my 5 favorite WrestleMania matches. I'm going to start in chronological order. This is a pretty, some people might not agree with this list either. Although I don't know, all these I think are pretty well liked across the board here. But we'll start from WrestleMania 3. Randy Savage, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, Intercontinental title on the line. You know, Gunther and Sami Zayn this weekend are about to have a huge match for the Intercontinental title. And pretty much due to Gunther's legacy and his title reign that's lasted well over 600 days, the IC title is kind of back with some prominence. And I think it really, really gained its first, bits of prominence back in 1987 when this match took place. It's a great technical bout, in ring, out of the ring, great story leading up to it with the crushed larynx of Steamboat, and a great little random nuanced finish with the roll up. It was not how you thought it was going to end. And even though Hogan Andre is the most, important match in the history of pro wrestling, I would argue this was the best match on that show by far. So, Josh, what are your thoughts? Savage Steamboat, WrestleMania 3. I mean, I think it speaks for itself, no?
Oh yeah, it 100% speaks for itself. I think that match is better than Hogan Andre, even though I think Hogan Andre had the bigger moment for wrestling history. I think that's one of the best matches of that era, because you never really got to see that type of technical wrestling back then. It was more of a slow, methodical type of matches where you had two big men just going at it so slow. But this was like a high-paced match for the IC title. I'm glad Steamboat won, because I think Steamboat's probably one of the most underrated wrestlers of that era. So it was nice to see him get that big WrestleMania win.
Donnie, Mania 3, a lot of great matches, a lot of fun. Is this the greatest match from that show?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm ecstatic that you picked this match, because this is one of my favorite WrestleMania matches of all time. I agree with you that this probably sets the precedent for how the Intercontinental Championship is viewed moving forward as the workhorse title, because this is just a technical masterpiece all around. These two guys were made for each other, and I think on any other pay-per-view card that didn't have Hogan and Andre, this could have been a main event and a solid one. And the promos that Macho Man cuts on Ricky the Dragon Steamboat leading up to this match, if you go back on YouTube and watch them, they are hysterical. They're probably some of the best promo work he's ever done. But yeah, I agree with you. This deserves to be in the spot.
All right. And then we move to another early WrestleMania here. WrestleMania 7. Somehow, again, Randy Savage pops up, and not only did he have the best match at WrestleMania 3, but he had the best match at WrestleMania 7, arguably the greatest match that the Ultimate Warrior has ever had. Savage Warrior career-threatening match. This match is in 1991, and it features false finishes from finishing moves, which never happened ever. Randy Savage hits 5 elbows from the top rope on Warrior here, doesn't get the win. And after multiple shoulder tackles, Warrior stands with 1 foot on Savage, looks to the heavens, and the pin is counted. All that, and then you get the desecration of Queen Sherry and Savage, leading to the return of Miss Elizabeth in one of the most emotional moments in WrestleMania history. This match and segment have it all. I love this match. It is Ultimate Warrior's greatest match, I would argue. I know Hogan and him had a great match at 6, but this has so much more drama to me. The Elizabeth factor, of course, they keep cutting to her throughout. The kicking out of finishers is insane in 1991 when everything was so protected. And the other part that I absolutely love, Ultimate Warrior's trunks on the back of them have the WWF World title, the Winged Eagle belt on them. And around the title, the words say, means much more than this. And whether, you think that that's a shot at creative because he wasn't booked in a world title match or it's unprofessional, I think as a character, that is a genius nuance to his gear, showing that, look, I don't have to be in the world title match for this match to mean a lot to me. And my career's on the line. So, in fact, it is more important than the title. And damn, I just love this match top to bottom. So, Donnie, what are your thoughts on this match? If you've seen it recently or just any thoughts at all?
I agree with you again on this one. The false finishes back then are crazy. To think that he took 5 elbow drops and just kept rolling is incredible. The storytelling in this match is really good. The ending is an absolute tearjerker. What a moment. You don't get that moment. I think if Macho Man wins, that's the only thing that I really didn't care for. I thought Mach should have went over just because he had a lot left as an in-ring performer, and I don't think Vince McMahon agreed with that. But the man was probably the best. He was Mr. WrestleMania before Shawn Michaels. In this era, Macho Man Randy Savage is the best WrestleMania performer. But I agree with you that it's the Ultimate Warrior's best match of his career, probably, other than the Hulk Hogan match in the previous WrestleMania. And yeah, this deserves a spot as well.
Josh, I'm sure you recently watched WrestleMania 7 because you love old wrestling. What are your thoughts on this match? Savage, Warrior, career on the line.
I think like Donnie said, like you said, I think this was a great match. I will admit, when I first saw this match probably years ago, I did shed a few tears because of Savage, quote unquote, had to retire. And then the ending when Sherry, I never really liked Sherry with Savage when Sherry attacked Savage at the end, and then Elizabeth made the save for Savage, made this even a bigger tearjerker for me, because I feel like Elizabeth and Savage are probably the best wrestling couple of all time, even better than probably Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. So yeah, at bottom line is that was a great match, and I 100% agree with you that should be that high on your list.
All right, and we transition to WrestleMania 10. I mean, this is a great card, honestly. It's got an intriguing setup for the world title where it could be this, it could be that. They could have gone a triple threat, but they didn't. And you get the Owen Brett opener, which is arguably one of the greatest matches in the history of WrestleMania. Not even just opening matches, just one of the greatest matches in WrestleMania history. And it's funny, WrestleMania 10, you got brothers Owen and Brett one-on-one. WrestleMania 25, Matt and Jeff Hardy going one-on-one. And now this weekend, WrestleMania 40, Jimmy and Jey Uso one-on-one. So the history of Brothers of WrestleMania, of course, is huge. However, that is not my pick here. I think the best match at WrestleMania 10 is Shawn Michaels, Razor Ramon, the ladder match. This is not the first ladder match in WWE history, but it is the first ladder match on pay-per-view for WWE. The simplicity of one ladder, the simplicity of it never being done on pay-per-view, like WWE fans had never seen anything like this before. To put it in Madison Square Garden, like the WWE's main building, I mean, everything was set up for a classic match here, and it didn't disappoint. I mean, the spots that this is the debut of spots, like these spots for ladders and ladder matches. This is where it all started, really, like throwing Shawn into it in the corner and just using it as a weapon and falling off it, hitting a suplex off it, the splash from the ladder to the canvas. I mean, classic imagery here. And it's tough to top the first one on pay-per-view. Now, the match that I have chronologically last, I think, does top this match in particular, but it doesn't happen without this match occurring in 94. So Shawn, Razor, Mania 10, Josh Cross. In the realm of ladder matches, is this just one of the best?
I think this is the best ladder match of all time. You've had multiple finishers during this match. Just the whole feud between just the whole feud between Ramon and Michaels leading up to it was insane. I have watched this match multiple times. The rewatch value of this match is off the chart. But yeah, I agree. It definitely should be up there. So,
Donnie, where does this match land in the pantheon of ladder matches for you? Is it great because it's the first, or is it great because it's great?
I knew where you were going the moment you said WrestleMania 10. And again, this is another one of my favorite WrestleMania matches. This ladder match, even though it's the first on pay per view, stands the test of time with any other ladder match up until now. The spots are super simple, but the storytelling in this match is incredible. I'm going to correct Josh when he says, the rewatch value to this match is limitless. It has no limit. You can go back and watch it at any time and you'll enjoy it no matter what, no matter how many times you've seen it. Razor comes in underneath the ladder at the beginning, and then you get the iconic pose at the end with him and the two titles. This match is incredible.
Well, I'm glad that you guys shared the same sentiment pretty much for this match. I mentioned Shawn and Brett having potentially an overrated match in the last part of the segment. And now we get Shawn at WrestleMania 10, and I'm going to go with my next chronological choice for best match, WrestleMania 13, Bret Hart, Steve Austin. This, of course, is an unbelievable match. I really don't need to describe it too much in detail, but I mean, it's a brutal match, submission match. There's blood, there's a war, there's brutality, there's iconic imagery again of the sharpshooter being placed on Steve Austin with the blood dripping down his face into his teeth. I mean, wrestling fans, and rightfully so, can look at current storylines and current events and potentially even this weekend saying that was cinematic. And I'm not going to argue with that. I think there's a lot of things that are, cinematic about today's wrestling product. I mean, everything is just elevated to that degree. But when you look at the history of wrestling, whenever people weren't calling that cinema, but it literally looked like a movie or someone that had, of course, it was planned, in advance, but the imagery I don't think could have been planned any better of that particular shot of Austin with the blood dripping down his face. This is just an iconic match across the board, and it made Steve Austin a huge star. This is Bret Hart's last WrestleMania match until WrestleMania 26, but we might be talking about that in another segment, for better or worse. So, Donnie, Austin and Bret, I mean, this is just the tops, right? This is an unbelievable bout.
This could arguably be considered the greatest WrestleMania match of all time. This match from top to bottom is just a slugfest. They even legitimize it with getting Ken Shamrock to be the special guest enforcer for the match. And this really legitimized Stone Cold Steve Austin, I think, is the badass that everybody thought he was going to be. Bret made him look like $1 million even without him winning the match. So it goes to show you don't always have to win to come out looking better than you went in. Just go in and do good business and tell a phenomenal story, and that's all you need to do.
Josh, is this the greatest WrestleMania match of all time, or is it close? Where does it rank for you?
I don't know. I don't know if I would call it the greatest WrestleMania match of all time. It's definitely up there. I'd have to think about what my top 5 list overall would be for all 39 Manias, but it's definitely up there. I love the fact that Bret had Austin in the sharpshooter, and he's just laying there trying not to pass out, blood dripping from him, and then finally he passes out, and Shamrock has to ring the bell and give the match to Bret.
Yeah, this is again, iconic, I think is just a term that I can keep going back to with that particular match. And a lot of the matches that I've selected thus far. Chronologically, we're going to get to my 5th favorite match of WrestleMania history. It doesn't happen without WrestleMania 10 and Shawn and Razor Ramon. Some might argue that they would never want to see a match like this again. However, we always see matches like this pretty regularly. But it was a perfect storm of where wrestling was. It's at the greatest WrestleMania, I think, of all time, which, again, was a perfect storm of WCW being purchased just a week prior, and the storylines building up to it. It was at the Astrodome. It was a huge, just Just everything lined up so perfectly. My favorite and arguably the greatest WrestleMania match of all time, in my humble opinion, WrestleMania 17, TLC 2, Hardys, Dudleys, Edge and Christian. This match, I've watched probably over 100 times. This match is a match that I have shown people that have never watched wrestling before in their lives. This is one I go to, you know, I recommend this to anybody, I need a match to watch. I need 30 minutes to kill. I want to watch something that's like a car crash on TV. I've never watched wrestling. What could it be like? This is a match you show anybody that's never watched wrestling, knowing that by the end of it, they're going to be so entertained that they have to watch more wrestling at some point. I know it's not a traditional wrestling match, but again, the factors in play, three teams, one of the arguably one of the greatest teams in pro wrestling history, the Dudleys, or at least decorated from ECW, previously, now fully fledged in the WWE, the Hardys and Edge and Christian, who had just tore the roof off a couple pay-per-views with SummerSlam 2000 in a ladder match, or TLC, the original, and the ladder match at No Mercy 99. You had the tables match at Rumble 2000. I mean, everything lined up for these guys to have a crazy match, and they did. The amount of ladders in this match, the amount of tall ladders, the height of the ladder that Jeff Hardy dives off of is unbelievable. The inclusion of everybody has a player for their team on the bench that comes out to help, like Spike Dudley, who gets thrown through a table, Lita, who comes out and, she gets her comeuppance, but she has a great moment. Rhino, of course, helping Edge and Christian win the whole thing. The Bubba Matt Hardy through the 4 tables from the ring to the outside is unbelievable. Of course, the moment that maybe outside of King of the Ring 98, where Foley gets thrown off the Hell in a Cell, maybe the moment that gets played most right behind that is Jeff Hardy, who almost successfully climbed across 3 ladders to get to this spot, but ends up hanging off the title belts. The ladder gets removed, and Edge hits a spear from a 20-foot ladder. I got chills just talking about that right just now, and every time I've seen it, I get goosebumps. It's an unbelievably emotionally evoking spot, and the match is just amazing. It's just from the bell ringing, it doesn't stop. Josh, I'm sure you've seen this match quite a few times. What are your thoughts on TLC 2 at WrestleMania 17?
Now that I thought about it, I think TLC 2 is probably the greatest WrestleMania match of all time. You had it's a work of art onto itself. Like you said, if there's one wrestling match to show somebody who's never watched wrestling before, this is probably it, and this is why it's probably tops my WrestleMania list for all 39 Manias. Fun fact about the match: every performer went through a table at least once, except for Devon and Lita.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm potentially convinced you to say this is the greatest of all time. Donnie, what are your thoughts on this? Car crash is the best way I could describe it.
It might be a car crash, but man, it's a work of art too. These 3 teams were made for each other. The chemistry that all 3 teams had were just off the charts. For them to have an absolute phenomenal match at WrestleMania 2000 and the Triangle Ladder match, and then they come back the following year and not only top it, but to go to the level that they did in this match speaks for itself. This is probably the greatest ladder match in history, I would say. You can make the argument for Shawn and Razor, but I will go out and say that this is the best. And yeah, man, it set the precedent for WrestleMania ladder matches. You have multi-man Money in the Bank matches after this. You have an IC title multi-man match. We're getting a 6-pack challenge ladder match, tag team match at WrestleMania this year. So I think it did a lot as far as, the way the future's going and how things have been booked for the show and people getting an opportunity to be on the show. But I will say this for the last time, IWC, the Hardys are out of multi-man ladder matches. They're not doing it anymore. Stop booking them in it, please. It's over.
Well, that remains to be seen. I mean, I know all 6 of these guys arguably could still work. I don't know if I ever want to see them in a ladder match again, but wow, it's just great going over these first 19 Manias. I know it was a little bit more of a comb over for these because it's 19 years of it, and we'll get to Donnie here in a moment. We'll get just a 9-year frame, but some of the matches just the first 20, the first 19 Manias arguably are just not the best objectively, but they were the ones that set the standard. After WrestleMania 21, they hit, bigger. Well, I guess they hit Allstate Arena, but Mania 23 they go back to Ford Field, and 24 they started hitting stadiums. They started really branching out to huge arenas. The first 19 are, they're all great in their own way, but they really set the tone for what WrestleMania became. And without them, we don't get what we're getting this weekend either. So without further ado, let's go into it, Donnie. You can do it however you want. You can rattle them off. You can go, a little description before each one. From WrestleManias 20 through 29, let's hear your worst 5 matches from that particular era. You let us know when you want us to chime in, or maybe we'll just chime in whenever we hear you pause.
Okay, so I listed these from least worst to worst, I guess. So, we're going to go from 5 to 1. Number 5 being Brock Lesnar versus Goldberg at WrestleMania 20. The match itself isn't a bad match. And I remember being a kid, I was looking forward to this a lot because it was just 2 hosses. This is truly meat, as they're saying now. This is the meat of the order that's coming in. And, everybody thought that this was the unstoppable force meets the immovable object. The problem is that the smart fans got a hold of this and realized that both guys were getting ready to leave, and the crowd just absolutely hijacked and just took a dump on it. They didn't want anything to do with it whatsoever. In the end, this match became more about Stone Cold Steve Austin than it did about the 2 guys in the ring, I think. And rightfully so probably, but this match could have been a lot more than what it was had they been allowed to put on a performance that I think they could have. So if you guys disagree or agree, feel free to chime in, whoever wants to go first.
Yeah, I agree. It did turn out to be more about Austin than anything. And when you when the fans get a hold of what the real life is going to go on, you better book it the best way possible because how the Madison Square Garden crowd is going to react. So, yeah, I couldn't be in more agreement. Josh, what are your thoughts on that match?
I think Austin saved it at the end whenever he stunned everybody. It was unfortunate that the crowd had to interfere like they did because they both knew both guys were moving on to probably bigger and better, or what they thought at least were bigger and better things for them. But life kind of gets in the way sometimes. But I do agree with you that would be an appropriate worst WrestleMania match purely because of the fan interaction.
Go ahead, Donnie.
All right. Number 4, we're going to go Sheamus versus Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania 28. There's not much I can tell you about the match because only about one move takes place after a kiss of death, and it ends in 18 seconds. The problem that I have with it is you're looking at 2 of the best in-ring performers of the past 20 years, maybe. The general consensus is that Bryan Danielson is the greatest wrestler in the world right now, and maybe ever. And Sheamus puts on banger after banger after banger, as we know. So I think that these guys should have been given way more than 18 seconds to showcase their skills, especially in a match for the World Heavyweight Championship.
I agree. What a waste. And these 2 would end up having other big, solid matches, I believe, in the future. But, I mean, unfortunately, this was a moment where you could have had a great match, and they just neglected to do so. And, I mean, 2 years later, you get Daniel Bryan's biggest moment as a pro wrestler, and Sheamus is still having really strong matches to this day in his own right. So times are better, but WrestleMania 28 was not their finest hour. Josh, you go ahead.
So you definitely could have given some more time to that match and probably taken away from like that Raw versus SmackDown tag team match that they had instead. However, I think in the end, when we look at it over a decade from sorry, when you start looking at it from over a decade past when it happened, it did what it was supposed to do. It made Daniel Bryan into a fan favorite. That's when his start towards superstardom in WWE kind of launched him off, and that's when the whole Yes movement kind of started in its infancy. So, yes, having the match last less than 30 seconds is a disappointment, but at the end of the day, it did what it was supposed to do, which was to launch Daniel Bryan to superstardom.
Go ahead, Donnie. See what you got.
All right, number 3. We got Y2J Chris Jericho versus Jimmy Snuka, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, and Rowdy Roddy Piper in a 3-on-1 handicap match at WrestleMania 25. I'm pretty sure that this match was supposed to take place with Mickey Rourke challenging Chris Jericho, because this was around the time that The Wrestler came out and they wanted to capitalize on it. I'm not quite sure why that match didn't take place. Maybe it had something to do with insurance policies for Mickey Rourke's films or something of that nature. Two of the 3 legends in this match, I'm sorry to say this because I love them both, just were not really able to do much anymore. Like, their bodies just were not able to hold up to working in a capacity like this. So Ricky the Dragon Steamboat pretty much carries the bulk of the match with Jericho, and then it ends around 8.5 minutes, and Ric Flair comes in at the end. But like, I just feel like this match really didn't need to take place. I understand the legend value and trying to get people on the card and, nostalgia, but you could have just did Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Chris Jericho and got the same outcome.
And they did at Backlash 2009, and it was one hell of a match, and arguably one of my favorite pay-per-views from that era, combined with the Last Man Standing match between Edge and Cena. But yeah, they try to capitalize on The Wrestler, and The Wrestler is the greatest wrestling movie, at least until the Iron Claw, in my opinion. And they tried to capitalize on that. And yeah, Mickey Rourke did come in. He got the sucker punch on Jericho. Well, not the sucker punch, but just the quick shot on Jericho for the spot, the segment. So that it was okay. And you said it perfectly, and it's really unfortunate too. I mean, Snuka and Piper couldn't do much anymore, and those guys are both gone now. So Steamboat, luckily, still around, and it's just a testament, man. He's been going at it for so long. I think he could still work. So yeah, this was not a great match. Josh, what are your thoughts?
I don't have much to add from what you guys said. It was just a publicity stunt for The Wrestler, which, I mean, makes sense to do. I wish Rourke could have been in the match, but like Donnie said, I think it was insurance reasons why he couldn't. But at least we got Steamboat in the match, so it makes me happy.
True. Go ahead, Donnie. Let's see what you got.
Dragon getting a lot of love, man. I love it. The man is like fine wine, timeless. Gets better with age. At number 2, I got Aki Bono versus The Big Show in a sumo wrestling match at WrestleMania 21. There's even less notes to go over than the Daniel Bryan and Sheamus match that lasted 18 seconds, and this match somehow lasted 42 seconds longer than that. I don't understand why this match took place. I don't get the point of it. Whoever's idea it was, it should have just been thrown off the card, thrown in the trash. I don't know, but it's one of the worst matches I've ever seen.
I'm not going to disagree with you, but I'm going to come at it with a different perspective, because WrestleMania 21 was the first pay-per-view that I purchased when I got back into wrestling. WCW closed down in March of 2001, and for 4 years, I knew wrestling was still a thing, but like I was not keeping up with WWE, and I just didn't have time for it, or I just was doing other things or whatever. And lo and behold, No Way Out 05 comes to Pittsburgh, and I was aware of it, and I was like, oh, like wrestling's still kind of kicking. It's pretty cool, and it's coming to Pittsburgh, and a barbed wire steel cage match, and just like an intriguing thing, being around. And I didn't go to that show, but it intrigued me to enough of an extent that I started watching weekly. I got really into John Cena, as most everybody did. And WrestleMania 21 was the first show I purchased, and the rest they say is history. So this particular match I liked as a spectacle because, damn, I'd never been done before, never done since, and I think that's perfect. I think this is I'm happy that this match exists because it happened how it happened. It was never going to be better than this. It was always going to be terrible or lame and whatever, but it was a real sumo guy, and the only guy I think that could have pulled off being a sumo wrestler was Big Show, outside of Yokozuna, of course. So the spectacle of it, and I just have a different perspective. It's a buffet. It was for, a different type of audience, and it was a unique thing to attempt, and it just didn't work, I don't think, to the pure wrestling fan out there, but it was never really for them to begin with. So, but I get it. It was not a great moment. So, Josh, what are your thoughts on this debacle from '05?
I really wouldn't call it a debacle. I didn't know who Akibono even was before this match was announced. I assume they did it because there might be a big sumo wrestling fandom on the West Coast in LA. And correct me if I'm wrong. Was that a shoot sumo match? I
don't think so.
You think,
I don't know.
You think that was booked or whatever?
Well, I mean,
even if it was a shoot, he wasn't going to beat him anyway.
Do you think Big Show would have won anyway?
No.
So I think they just worked it and be like, hey, do the best you can. But I mean, if he takes you down, that's it. That's it.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that match.
And I like that you were like, oh, I didn't know who Akibono was. Well, that's because they didn't give you a promo package beforehand. Looking at you, AEW. Go ahead, Donnie. Let's hit it. Let's hear the last one.
Oh, we're gonna trigger the marks. The last match on my list is Michael Cole versus Jerry the King Lawler at WrestleMania 27. I understand why this match has to take place because Michael Cole may have been the hottest heel on the roster other than The Miz at that time. He had the coal mine, and I remember how annoyed I would get whenever he would announce for the anonymous general manager. But this match is just awful. It's horrible. Michael Cole has no business being in a wrestling ring. And then, of course, we have Stone Cold Steve Austin coming in once again to save the day and, save another terrible match. And then the ending makes absolutely no sense because the GM reverses the decision anyway, probably just to get more heat on Michael Cole, if I'm being honest. But you get Josh Matthews on commentary at a point, which he's probably one of my least favorite commentators in professional wrestling. So all around, this was just an unenjoyable experience for me.
Yeah, I can't disagree there. I get why they did it. I was a huge fan of the anonymous Raw GM. I thought it was a really random attempt to jump on technology and have that, factor in each week. And Michael Cole was an easy target, especially back then. I think he's very respected and revered now for his work, his perseverance throughout getting screamed at throughout a 6-hour WrestleMania every year. I mean, a lot of respect goes to Michael Cole now. And, 2011, a lot different story. Even if people respected him, they probably just didn't want him on screen like this. Call the matches. We don't want to see you have a match. And I liked having Jerry Lawler be the obvious choice to wrestle him. He's, a legend in his own right. But yeah, it was just not the best. Josh Matthews is not one of my favorite announcers either, so I could deal without it. But yeah, Steve Austin, man, coming to save the day no matter what year, decade, it doesn't matter. Josh, how bad was this match?
It was pretty bad, but honestly, I was looking forward to it because I was a coal miner back then. I think, like Donnie said, he was one of the best heels at the time. I understand why the match had to take place, but at the same time, you kind of weren't expecting this to be a masterpiece. It was a straight up comedic match. That's all it needed to be.
All right, Donnie, you've given us your worst. Let's hear your best. And if they happen to be the same as, or not the same, but if they happen to be something specifically that you want to touch on further, let's just hear all you got.
All right, before I get into that, I just want to say honorable mentions because I tried not to add somebody to the list more than once. Floyd Mayweather in the Big Show and Dean Ambrose and Brock Lesnar. I'm looking at you guys, man. Those matches were awful.
Okay, that match, Dean Ambrose and Lesnar was very hyped and did not deliver. I heavily disagree with the Floyd Mayweather Big Show match purely because at that time, Mayweather he was a huge deal, and they kind of ran. I could not believe they set it up at No Way Out '08 like they did at such a random B pay-per-view. I mean, now with the Logan Pauls and the Tyson Furies and like how they incorporate these types of guys in '08, I thought it was pretty cool to see. And Floyd getting that punch on Big Show to start the whole feud and then nailing him with the brass knucks at the show. Look, I'm here to make Big Show a punching bag, so I enjoyed the match. But Lesnar, Ambrose, ugh, I was there live. It was terrible.
Josh, you have anything you want to add to that, or can I just keep on rolling?
I just want to say I did rewatch Lesnar Ambrose again actually last week. It wasn't as bad as I remembered it. It was still pretty bad, but not as bad as I remembered it. I don't know if that's like recency bias towards any other matches, but that's just my 2 cents on the matter. So continue.
Okay, now we're going to do best WrestleMania matches. And once again, I ranked them 5-1. So we'll start with number 5 first. John Cena versus The Rock at WrestleMania 28. It was billed once in a lifetime, but we all know it happened more than once in a lifetime. Other than Hogan and Andre, I'm going to go out on a limb and say this is probably the biggest main event in WrestleMania history, just because of the box office attraction that The Rock brought. And once again, just like Hogan and Rock previously, this is an era versus era match, a dream match with two guys we never thought we were going to see wrestle each other. It has great storytelling. The finish is a good story too. You know, it's a unique finish. I'm glad the way they did it. And with Cena losing, it set up a year of adversity for him that he may or may not have had to go through. But I think it's a solid WrestleMania main event.
Yeah, I'm one of the only people that want to see a third match between Rock and Cena. I'm in a very, very tiny minority there, but look, this was this generation's Hogan, Rock, and I think it delivered. I think the hype was there. I think the build was there. It was an intriguing year in advance build that had never been done before, but they didn't just leave it hang out there. They had the Survivor Series 2011 tag match with Awesome Truth, who could be involved this weekend here at WrestleMania, depending on what goes down. And they set all that up, and the Hell in a Cell interference by Awesome Truth to Cena's match leading up to it, and like I said, the Madison Square Garden Survivor Series tag match was pretty cool, and all of it led up to I thought a really strong match. I remember vividly the Michael Cole commentary when Cena or Rock hits the crossbody on Cena, and Cena just rolls right up over it and just deadlifts Rock, and Cole like gritting his teeth, being like powering, like the Cena looked like a zillion bucks hanging in there with the Rock, like, and I thought the best finish was the finish that they did. You know, Cena is the guy, but The Rock was the guy already, and he still had some. So, you know, they set it up for the next year, which shouldn't have. If Rock's going to win the one, you're going to send off Cena as the future in the next match, which is fine. But I thought the first match was the best. Josh, what are your thoughts?
I love the year-long build towards it. Like you said, it had never been done before. I think it made the match hype that much better. Because I remember watching the Raw after Mania 27 when Cena issued the challenge to The Rock. I got so hyped because of that, because I thought I would have never seen The Rock wrestle again. I thought he just came back for that WrestleMania 27 as a host, with no full time, with no wrestling duties whatsoever. So actually hearing that he's going to wrestle eventually got me so hyped for that match. I think one of the best aspects of that match was actually after the match when Cena was sitting on the entrance ramp, just looking dejected as all ever over losing the match after issuing the challenge a year earlier. You could just see the pain in Cena's eyes during that shot.
All right, Don, let's keep it rolling.
Number 4, I got Kurt Angle versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 21. This is a technical wrestling fan's dream match in every way possible. This is just an absolute masterpiece of wrestling between two of the best wrestlers of all time. I didn't think that this match was actually going to happen. You know, when they announced it, I was kind of shocked, and I got excited right away because it was one of those interpromotional matches that they were doing at the time, and like this bracket of WrestleManias. They had a pretty cool spot wherever Kurt was going to German suplex Shawn onto the floor, and then Shawn reversed it and did the leapfrog onto the broadcast table. And this is one of the rare times where you see Shawn actually lose the submission to somebody, and it legitimized Kurt as a badass. You know, this was going into the wrestling machine, Kurt Angle, and he definitely earned that title because, man, this was a barn burner.
You know, it's pretty telling that WrestleMania 21 comes up twice, best and worst. This is maybe Kurt Angle's greatest WrestleMania match, I would say, and Shawn Michaels arguably one of his best WrestleMania matches, and he could have more on this list in particular. So that's saying a lot. I love the match. It is a clinic, and man, when you see interpromotional and you knew that Shawn and Kurt are on Raw and SmackDown, damn, you knew you were in for a great match because these guys were meant for each other in ring. Josh, what are your thoughts on this match?
In a WrestleMania in which was supposed to highlight the next generation coming to form in Cena and Batista's wins, this is by far the best match at that Mania. Like Donnie said, it established Kurt as a wrestling machine, and there's so many great spots during that match. I honestly think this might be Shawn Michaels' best WrestleMania match, hands down.
Wow, that's high praise. Donnie, continue.
That's bold considering the rest of the list contains Shawn Michaels, baby. In the 20s, Shawn Michaels was the MVP. This man had back problems before he really had them after this. Number 3, I have Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker 2 at WrestleMania 26, streak versus career. You know, I don't have to tell you everything that happens in this match. This match is an absolute masterpiece of a performance. It doesn't quite live up to the standard of the first one, I don't want to say, just because it had been so long between Shawn and Taker getting in the ring together during the first match that they had at WrestleMania. But, man, this match is unbelievable. The ending, too, man, when Shawn loses and you know it's over, like that's a heart-wrencher.
Yeah, I mean, I prefer the 25 match, and I don't know what your other match is, so that's, completely fair. I don't want to intrude there, but yeah, this is a great match. The ending is perfect. The slap to the face, the defiance into the jumping tombstone. It's just a masterpiece from top to bottom. So, I mean, these guys made musical, just an album of wrestling poetry here, and I don't know. They don't make them like they used to. We used to get, what Taker match are we going to get this year? What Shawn Michaels match are we going to get this year? And every single time it was just like, great match, another great match, streak's still going. What a great match. So, wow, what a great match that was. Josh, do you like this one or do you prefer the 25 one?
I do prefer the 25 one way better. However, I do like the promo music for this match, the Running Up the Hill song by Placebo. I think that perfectly details the whole feud between Michaels and Taker up to that point.
Go ahead, Donnie. What's your number 1?
Number 2, I got.
Or number 2, excuse me.
I got you. It's going to be a little bit of a controversial pick. I can understand why some people wouldn't want this on their list or even hear it all. But it's going to be Triple H versus Shawn Michaels versus Chris Benoit at WrestleMania 20. It's probably the best triple threat match in WrestleMania history. The ending with Triple H tapping out to the Crippler Crossface is the first time anyone's ever been submitted in a WrestleMania main event. It also finishes Chris Benoit's story. And, if you followed him along throughout this and you were a big fan, regardless of what has happened, I'm pretty sure everybody wanted to see that outcome. And then you get the ending with Eddie Guerrero and them two being champions, which we never thought would happen in WWE. It was really just a perfect ending to WrestleMania. And it's overshadowed by what happened now, unfortunately.
Yep, we just recently celebrated 20 years since that event, which is pretty crazy. And yeah, outside of the final events of Chris Benoit's life, this was arguably one of the greatest moments in WrestleMania history. The match is stellar. I will disagree on the triple threat aspect. I think the greatest triple threat match in WrestleMania history takes place in Josh's segment, but we'll get there. But this was a great match in its own right. The first submission, it really put over Benoit as a legitimate threat to anybody. You know, he won the world title by tapping out the biggest, best heavyweight that WWE had at the time. A guy who had reigned supreme for so long. And he did it in Madison Square Garden. You know, the quote undersized guys get their huge moment, best friends, confetti, tears. It's fairy tale. It's crazy. So looking back on it, it's almost eerie in retrospect, considering that happened in 2004, and both those guys would be taken from us within the next 3.5 years. So just a scintillating moment. Josh, what are your thoughts?
I'll let you know what my favorite triple threat match is in my portion of the segment. However, one of my favorite aspects of that match was Benoit reversing the switching music from Shawn Michaels and then reversing the pedigree from Triple H to put him into crossface and make him tap out.
Donnie, give us your number one.
I'm sure everybody knows what number one is at this point. It's probably, in my opinion, the greatest WrestleMania match of all time. It is the first time that these two guys face each other in a one-on-one match in 11 years. The Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 25. You have that epic spot of Taker trying to dive over the top rope and Shawn's supposed to pull the cameraman, but they don't hit it quite right. And you're worried that the Undertaker broke his neck, which is just a crazy spot that he gets up and gets out of and puts on this classic afterwards, because any normal human being probably would have been concussed out of their gourd. But this match will stand the test of time. It's arguably the greatest match that either performer has ever had. And it is just wrestling storytelling at its finest, man. Like, they put on an absolute clinic.
Yeah, I really can't disagree with anything here. This is my favorite, the two, 25 and 26 between Shawn and Taker. It's a testament to both guys, considering that they had the Hell in a Cell match, which was arguably one of the greatest matches in wrestling history, and then they do this 12 years later. I mean, my God, like, just the longevity of those guys is a testament to them. And it's just a perfect match, top to bottom. So not much more I can add to it. Josh, what are your thoughts?
I agree. I believe it's the best WrestleMania match from 20 through 29. I believe this was a match that kick-started the whole Undertaker stretch of having these almost 5-star matches at WrestleMania. The one aspect of this match that I remember the most was their entrances when Shawn Michaels was descending from like heaven and Undertaker was supposed to like rise up from hell, and I liked how they contrasted like the light and the dark during those entrances. But yeah, I agree with Donnie. This is definitely the number one match from Mania 20 through 29.
All right, that was a great portion of the WrestleMania eras, Donnie. And now we get to the third and final, the WrestleMania 30 through 39 portion. Josh, let's start with your worst matches from this stretch of WrestleManias. Let's run them down 5-1, or however you would like. Just start rattling them off, and we'll discuss as need be.
All right. So I'm just gonna name them all, and then for the worst matches, and then if you want to make some comments at the end, please feel free to do. Number 5 is gonna be the Shield versus Kane and the New Age Outlaws at WrestleMania 30. I just think the Shield should have had a bigger match at that Mania, considering that they broke up like 2 months after the fact and they never really got their WrestleMania moment. Number 4 is going to be Bobby Lashley versus Omos from WrestleMania 38. It was just an overall horrible match, and I'm not the biggest Omos fan. Number 3 is going to be Bray Wyatt versus Randy Orton from WrestleMania 30, from 33. That was the match in which they had like the bugs in their ring. It was for the WWE. I forget if it was for the WWE title or the Universal title. It was definitely a title match.
WWE title.
WWE title. Yeah, it was just weird, even for like why with like all the bugs and all the like cockroaches popping up like in on a video in the ring. I just didn't like that. I'm not a big bug guy, so that probably has a lot to do with it. Number 2 is Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar from WrestleMania 34. I was there for that with Juice. It was just the end of a long WrestleMania, and we were just waiting for the match to get over. I remember, and there's nothing memorable from it. And number 1 is going to be Kurt Angle versus Baron Corbin from WrestleMania 35. I don't think anyone really wanted to see Kurt Angle face Corbin in his last match. I just feel like Kurt could have done better than that, and I think it was a little bit of a disrespect towards the legend to throw Corbin at him. But yeah, that's my list.
Yeah, I can pretty much agree with all of those. I do think that the Shield could have had a better representation for a match at that particular point, especially if you know that they're going to split up. Why don't you set them off with a little bit of a better program or what have you? The Randy Orton Bray Wyatt thing, I get what they were trying, but I just don't think that works for a WrestleMania. Like, you could have done that on any other B PLE and it would have been like fine, but you did this for WrestleMania. I just think it was like hacky. Like, I don't think you want to experiment that hard at your biggest show. Like, this is what WrestleMania is not necessarily the best place to try to be an innovator when it's the tried and true. You know, it's not a new pay-per-view concept that you're trying to sell. The Omos thing, yeah, he's not the best. I liked his match with Brock Lesnar, though. I will say that. Kurt Angle, Baron Corbin, that is very disappointing. I just feel like Kurt could have had any other match with anybody, and the fans would have been more receptive. And I get that the storylines were like that, but it didn't need to happen that way. It just didn't. Look, if Kurt wanted it that way, that's fine. I'm not gonna knock him. He's done everything. You know, he's the legend. I'm not gonna discourage that. So, but yeah, the list, I think it's a pretty solid list. Was your other one the Mania 34? Was that Roman Triple H? Is that what you said?
No, WrestleMania 34, Reigns versus Lesnar.
Oh, Reigns Lesnar, excuse me. That was 32 with Triple H. My bad. Yeah, that was
the Mania we were at in New Orleans.
Yeah, I know. That was Beach Ball Mania.
Correct.
Yeah, so that tells you all you need to say about that. So, Donnie, what are your thoughts on that hodgepodge of Josh's worst Mania matches?
I'm just going to try to run through it real quick. The Shield match was so bad, I forgot that it happened. Couldn't tell you one thing that happened in the match because that booking was just horrible. Omos and Lashley speaks for itself. I don't really need to delve too much into that one. As far as the Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton thing, you know, you're going to be hard-pressed for me to say anything bad about Bray Wyatt, but I think this was the first PLE or maybe even like the first WrestleMania where they debuted like the graphics on the stage and they were like trying all that stuff out. And Randy had like that weird snake that slithered down to the ring with him during his entrance, and we all know what it looked like, and it definitely was not a snake. So I think they just wanted to show like, hey, we can do this, but we never really got like an explanation as to why any of that happened. So it really didn't make much sense, and it felt unnecessary. It took away from a match too that was actually pretty good. Reigns and Lesnar is just, even talking about it gives me fatigue. Like, that feud is just so lethargic and so drawn out and so unnecessary the match they had at WrestleMania 31, the first one they had, far supersedes that. Like, Roman just took it to him at that match, and then we all know the ending, of course. And the last match was, what did you say? I'm trying to think.
Angle
It was
versus
Kurt.
Kurt Angle versus Baron Corbin. Yeah, excuse me if I forgot about that. I've been trying to forget about it for some time now. But I think Kurt wanted Cena, and on all accounts, I think he should have gotten John Cena for his last match. Should it have taken place at a Mania? Probably not. But, I feel like Kurt did enough to where he earned that say. As far as Corbin, like, not putting Kurt over, I know that probably wasn't Baron Corbin's decision, but hindsight being what it is, it did absolutely nothing for him. So I think Kurt should have been able to go on top in his retirement match.
Yeah, those are an interesting 5 choices, Josh. Let's flip it to the ones you love the most. Let's hear you rattle off your top 5, and we will discuss afterwards.
Number 5 is Gunther versus Drew McIntyre versus Sheamus at WrestleMania 39 last year. That match was just brutal and very hard hitting. I'm glad Gunther won. I'm glad Gunther still has the title. I'm glad he's still keeping this reign going on. I think that was a great. I think that was his first WrestleMania match. I'm not positive. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but either way, that was a great booking on WWE's part. I believe that was a 5-star match for Meltzer as well. Probably I think one of only two matches for that WrestleMania that got the 5-star. That and the only thing another
that matters here is straws. We're not talking about that bum.
Okay, sorry. 5 straws. And I'll use straws from here on out. Number 4, Cody Rhodes versus Seth Rollins from WrestleMania 38. The crowd reaction for Cody was just off the chart. They also put on a barn burner of a match for that Mania. I think that was my favorite match from that Mania. Number 3, the Usos versus Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn from WrestleMania 39. That main evented that night 1 of WrestleMania 39. That was also a 5-straw match. And I think it was a perfect way to end Sami Zayn's story with the Usos and the bloodline so far. Number 2 is going to be Daniel Bryan versus Triple H from WrestleMania 30. I loved that whole story. It was nice to finally see Daniel Bryan get the upper hand on Triple H, and then later on the night winning the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. And number 1 is going to be Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar versus Seth Rollins at WrestleMania 31 when Seth cashed in. I think I speak for everyone when I say that it was probably the craziest WrestleMania moment ever, the heist of the century, as they like to call it. I don't think many people were expecting it. I think people wanted it, but I don't think people expected WWE to actually pull the trigger on having them doing it during the main event of WrestleMania mid-match. But that's my list. Let's hear what you guys have to say.
Yeah, it's interesting how, you have a couple matches from the last 2 Manias in here, but it's a real testament to how great the last few Manias have been, and the fact that your first 2 are 30 and 31 shows you exactly that. It's, Mania 29, people were like, ugh, Cena, Rock again, but then 30, you have an incredible story. The fans kind of helped out, and Bryan wins. The following year, you get a Money in the Bank cash in the main event to turn it into a triple threat, and a guy who wasn't even advertised in the match wins the match. The same guy who took one of the greatest RKOs of all time earlier in the night. And then, look, 32, 33, 34, and 35. Then the COVID Mania, and then the following one at Tampa. It seems like not much is remembered from those in regards to in-ring. And in fact, we've mentioned some real negatives from those shows. And then you get the last 3, and you get Cody returning to WWE with a huge match against Seth, Usos and KO with Sammy main eventing a night 1, and then the triple threat for the IC title. Just an unbelievable match. I don't disagree with any of these choices. I think the triple threat between Brian Orton and Batista could be the greatest triple threat in WrestleMania history. It's very similar to the Shawn Michaels, Benoit, Triple H from 20, but man, just the power bomb into the RKO is a memorable moment that elevates that match for me. The Miracle on Bourbon Street, Dusty Rhodes being front row there, just a lot of great imagery from that match. And then the Mania triple threat from 31. It's hard pressed to find an ending to a WrestleMania better than that, as exciting, as thrilling as that. So, yeah, great list, Josh. Donnie, let's hear your thoughts on all those.
There's not much I can say to really disagree with any of his choices. I wish he would have had the Firefly Funhouse match in there somewhere, just because that holds a special place in my heart from a forgotten WrestleMania. But, I don't know if we can really count that as a match. Anytime you put Gunther and Sheamus's names together on a match sheet, just take my money. And then adding Drew McIntyre to it just adds even more firepower to an already incredible match. Cody Rhodes coming back. I remember Josh texting me that night, and he actually texted me and goes, "Is the crowd just not saying anything, or is it just so loud?" And I remember just sitting there like, bro, it is so loud. Like, you can't even hear the people. That's how loud that they're being in that arena. The endings for Daniel Bryan and Seth Rollins speak for themselves. They're two of the best endings of WrestleMania of all time. Long-term storytelling really does pay off, as you can see with those two guys. And then, of course, long-term storytelling again with the Bloodline, Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. Man, the booking the last couple of WrestleManias has really been off the charts. Like, I can't wait to see what they do this year.
Yeah. Again, it's crazy that the first part of the 30s and the last couple here have been really strong. Hopefully the 40s start off with a great WrestleMania this weekend in Philadelphia. But, man, great to hear you guys discuss 20 through 29, Josh 30 through 39, Donnie, of course, with the 20, and then myself with the first 19, really just going over the entire run of the show of shows. A lot of great banter there. Let's move on to another segment. I don't think anything's going to be as lengthy as that first segment, but I mean, we wanted to cover it all here on the Juice Box. Now we're going to take a little detour. This is a specific segment that I have posed to you guys where, let's hear some dream matches that could or should have happened in your opinion, but didn't for one reason or another, and I will kind of chime in on them. So what I'm going to have you guys do, I know you both selected 3. I want each of you, I'll start with one of you, tell me your 3 matches, and then select one of those 3 matches as the match you would have preferred to see. If you could have one of those matches actually happen, pick that one out of the 3. And then the following person will do the same, and I'll kind of chime in based off that. Because I did not, I have my own couple of choices, but I would wager that you guys will probably select matches that I thought of. So we'll just play it by then. Josh, go first. Give me your 3 matches that you should have seen at WrestleMania but didn't, and then pick one that you have ultimately loved to have seen more than the rest.
So number 3, I'm going to go with the Shield triple threat. I think they should have had their own WrestleMania main event and not have it be the main event of Battleground in 2016, I believe. Number 2, Sting versus Undertaker, which pretty much speaks for itself. They're both the company men of their respective companies. Sting with WCW, Undertaker with WWE. They both had that supernatural type of character to it. I feel like they would have made magic in the ring. Number 1, CM Punk versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. That's going to be the match I wanted to see the most out of these dream WrestleMania matches. It's supposed to be before Punk left WWE back in 2014. I feel like they were building up to this with the interview Jim Ross did with Punk and Austin for WWE 13. the video game. This is supposed to be the passing of the torch moment. I know Punk looked up to Stone Cold a lot when he was growing up and through his early wrestling career. I know Stone Cold has a lot of respect for CM Punk. Punk was essentially the Austin of like the late 2000s, early 2010s. I just feel like it would have been a great passing of the torch moment, and it was sold tons of thousands upon thousands of buys for WWE.
Yeah, I don't disagree with those in particular. And as a matter of fact, I do have the Shield triple threat and Punk versus Austin on this particular list. The triple threat, like it just would have been so great to see on a main scale. They're two guys that really just dominated as a faction, and then to see them split up, was inevitable. But WrestleMania, I mean, these guys, you look at it now, Jon Moxley is one of the biggest stars in AEW, and then Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns are both the world champion in WWE. And I would also say Mox has been like the cornerstone of AEW, no matter what happens, good or bad. Like, he's there to help save it and manage it and salvage it. So all three are so very important, and it sucks that we never got to see that. Yeah, the CM Punk Steve Austin match. What was the other match that you had said, Josh? I can't recall off the top of my head what you mentioned.
Sting versus Undertaker.
Oh yeah, Sting versus Undertaker. Yeah, okay, we'll do. So Punk Austin. Yeah, they're one and the same. The WWE 13 thing clearly seemed to set up a match, but for one reason or another, it never happened. And I don't think I would rule it out just yet. I think it's an outside shot, but Steve Austin did work with Kevin Owens a couple of Manias ago, and it looked fine. So I don't see why you couldn't do that with CM Punk, just to get the promos. Like, why wouldn't you want to see that? If The Rock can do what he's been doing promo-wise, social media and on SmackDown, can you imagine what CM Punk and Steve Austin would do in a match, a promo leading up to that match? And then Sting Undertaker, yeah. I wouldn't have hated it to see it as a cinematic match either. That would have been fun to see. They pulled it off. And to go back to our previous segment, I think the Firefly Funhouse and the Boneyard match are very memorable, and I think you could put them as solid, great matches from the 30 to 39 era, even if they weren't traditional matches. But yeah, Sting Undertaker never happened. I would have loved to have seen it. Of course, we did get Sting Triple H, but Triple H went over. I don't know who would have went over with Taker and Sting, but probably the guy who never was, the stalwart of WCW. I think Taker would have taken that for sure. Donnie, let's hear your three matches that you would have loved to have seen at WrestleMania but never got to see, and select the one you would have loved to have seen the most.
So I had these split up in like three different portions. I had my own personal fantasy match that I'd love to see, a match that I think is underrated as far as like people putting fantasy matches out there. I don't hear this one a lot. And then the obvious one is Sting and Undertaker. I feel like that's probably the most requested fantasy match from professional wrestling fans. So I'm going to buck away from that one just because Josh said it, and I'm going to go to a different one. This may or may not be able to still happen. I don't know. It depends on how things shake out within the next few years, but I would love to personally see two of my favorites right now in the wrestling world, Roman Reigns versus Kenny Omega. I think the storytelling in that match would be absolutely phenomenal. I think both performers are at the top of their game, and I hope that they can come together and put this together before both men are out of their primes. If somehow Kenny decides that he wants to leave AEW, because I know Roman will never leave WWE. So, that's just a little AEW versus WWE fantasy booking for you. The second one to me is a super underrated fantasy booking match. The Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels versus Eddie Guerrero. With both men being from Texas, I feel like they could have booked this at one of these Texas WrestleManias. And the fact that these guys never had a one-on-one match before is astounding to me, given that they're two of the greatest professional wrestlers of all time in general consensus. If you ask any wrestling fan who were two of the best performers ever, you're going to hear both of those names 9 times out of 10. And then my personal dream match would be The Fiend Bray Wyatt versus the Demon Finn Balor. I just feel like the characters in that match. You could tell a lot of different stories. You could have a lot of unique things going on. And I feel like from a supernatural perspective, that would be really cool for both of those characters to come together and clash, especially when Balor and Bray Wyatt already had a backstory put in between each other. They had feuded multiple times before this, and The Fiend's first match was against Finn Balor.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate that we'll never get the Fiend versus the Demon, but they were two characters in the same, universe, you could say, and I think it would have been such a unique match to have. You could have done that cinematically as well. I wouldn't have cared how they would have pulled it off. I think it would have looked incredible. Roman versus Kenny, I think not only is it on the table, but it would be unbelievable if they could do that match at some point in the future. I'm not sure if they will be able to pull it off. Like you said, Roman's probably never leaving WWE, but we said that about a lot of guys, especially, now. And Kenny Omega, same thing. I could see him staying in AEW for a while, but I could see him leaving as well for the promised land that is WWE before his career is over. And I do think Shawn Michaels and Eddie Guerrero was a potentially penciled in match for WrestleMania 22 in 2006 before Eddie's untimely passing. So that match was very, very close to happening, in my opinion. It would have been, another sequel to the Shawn Michaels great matches at WrestleMania, where he had one with Angle the previous year, and it didn't happen at 22. It just didn't. We got Shawn versus Vince instead, and then Shawn had another great match the following year with Cena, and then another one with Flair, and then Taker. Like, it would have been just fallen right in line with great WrestleMania matches for Shawn Michaels. So it's really a shame we never got to see it. Josh, out of those, which ones would you have liked to have seen the most?
So I'm definitely going to lean towards Roman Reigns versus Kenny Omega. I think at one point in the past 5 years, they have probably been 1 and 2 of the top best wrestlers of probably the 2020 so far. Kenny Omega leading AEW New Japan, while Roman is the top guy in WWE. I think they would put on one hell of a match. And hopefully maybe we'll see it one day. Probably not anytime soon, maybe in 10 years from now. But for me, it doesn't matter when it happens. It's more of, if it happens, I'm going to be happy about it no matter what. So
yeah, I think it's very possible. I don't know if it's plausible, but it's possible. And then I'm just going to go over some of the matches that I thought of. And they're definitely matches you guys selected. But Punk Austin, I would have loved to have seen. Sting versus Taker, of course, the Shield triple threat. I still think we'll get Punk versus Seth Rollins. It could have happened before, and I think it could still very well happen, which would be thrilling to see. Daniel Bryan versus CM Punk. I know they did it at Over the Limit in 2012, but imagine that at a WrestleMania. I'm not sure if that's still on the table. Stone Cold versus Hogan, which would have been nuts. We had, Rock Austin, Rock Hogan, Rock Cena, but we never got Austin Hogan, which I think would have arguably been the biggest WrestleMania match of all time to that point. And then the match that should have happened at a WrestleMania but never did, and we got it elsewhere in lesser than terms, even though I am a WCW fan. I didn't think it was less than, but it should have happened at Mania 8 at the Hoosier Dome, and it didn't in 92. Instead, we saw it at Bash at the Beach 94, and that is Hulk Hogan versus Ric Flair. Those two were set once Flair came in to WWE in 91 for a clash at Mania 8. Flair wins the Rumble. They do a press conference. Hogan is selected to face Flair. Sid Justice is seething and throws a temper tantrum, but they actually swerve that and have Sid Justice versus Hogan and Flair versus Savage. Flair versus Savage, still a good match, and we get the Ultimate Warrior return at the end of Sid Justice Hogan, even though there was a missed cue by Papa Shango, but maybe you shouldn't have a 45-yard entrance ramp for a guy that's 240 pounds to trek. So be that as it may, the match did happen at Bash at the Beach 94, broke a bunch of records, great for WCW, and they ran that back a few times in the course of WCW's history, but never at WrestleMania, so we will always have that to think about. Donnie, Josh, do you have any thoughts on the matches I just listed?
I think Flair Hogan should have main evented WrestleMania 8. I don't know what the background was as to why that was changed. 'Cause I know they did some house shows together, but apparently they didn't draw well, or the crowd really wasn't into it. But on paper, that definitely should have still main evented WrestleMania 8.
Go ahead, Donnie.
I agree with you on that point. I think they missed the mark on Hogan and Flair. I also could have, think it could have been one guy not wanting to put over the other. They probably just couldn't come to terms on who was going to do business.
Gee, you don't say.
Yeah. Two big egos like that. Who would think? Another one you mentioned is Seth Rollins and CM Punk. I'm really excited to see that. I hope it comes to fruition at some point at one of these WrestleManias in the future. Two other ones that we didn't mention I would like to see are eventually The Rock and Roman Reigns, which I think is getting set up for next year's WrestleMania. I think this year's WrestleMania is going to have a lot to do with that going into next year. And then I would also like to see CM Punk versus Cody Rhodes at next year's WrestleMania or at one of the WrestleManias following. I think the momentum of both those guys going into the next couple of years is going to be huge.
I think you got a lot there. Although they could pull the trigger on those matches at a SummerSlam for a buy rate or what have you, but I think both those could absolutely be set up for a WrestleMania, especially Rock Roman. That'll probably be a WrestleMania. But Punk Cody, if it does happen, I just hope it happens. If it's WrestleMania or not, whatever. But WrestleMania, of course, would be the best if you had the choice. Let's get to the final segment here. This is just going to be a little quick roundup. We've discussed all 40 WrestleManias pretty much in depth. We've covered a ton of the manias overall. We didn't, go. I know we didn't mention, 1, 2, 5, but we've mentioned probably 25 to 30 of the 40 WrestleManias so far, which is pretty cool. And then we discussed matches that may have never happened or should have at WrestleMania. Now we get to the brass tacks. The top 5 WrestleManias in your opinion. We've done best, worst, least favorite, should have been booked better, should have been booked, a different way, never happened, should have happened. These WrestleManias did happen, and we get to decide if we have them ranked higher than others. Donnie, you can go 5-1. Let's hear your personal favorite WrestleManias. Me personally, I went chronologically. I'm going to go from chronological order of my personal favorite WrestleManias. You can do it however you'd want, and we'll discuss after.
I just went 5-1. So at number 5, it's going to be WrestleMania 21. You have Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero, Edge winning the inaugural Money in the Bank ladder match, Taker and Randy Orton, Shawn Michaels and Kurt Angle, as we talked about earlier, and then you get the changing of the guard with John Cena beating JBL and Batista beating Triple H, and those two guys establishing themselves as the faces of the company moving forward. At number 4, I have WrestleMania 30. We have Daniel Bryan defeating Triple H, and then obviously going on to win the main event later on in the night. We have the streak ending, Brock Lesnar defeating The Undertaker, and a lot of people disagree with that, but it is a moment in itself. At number 3, I have WrestleMania 19. You get Shawn Michaels versus Chris Jericho in a super underrated match, in my opinion. It could have made my top 5 Mania matches if I would have had, 1 through 19. You get Triple H defeating Booker T, and we all know how some people feel about that. But, the 2 matches that really solidified this for me were The Rock and Stone Cold in the end of the trilogy. And, The Rock finally defeating Stone Cold and Stone Cold having his last match for almost 2 decades. And then you get Brock Lesnar and Kurt Angle in the main event, which is absolutely just an incredible match. The spot with Brock doing the shooting star press and almost killing himself is insane. At number 2 for me, I have WrestleMania 17. I know this is a lot of people's number ones. There are a lot of great matches on here. You get Chris Jericho and William Regal. You get the fun hardcore triple threat with Kane, Raven, and Big Show. You get Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit. Shane McMahon versus Vince McMahon, the TLC match we talked about before. You get this the gimmick battle royal, which was really fun. Undertaker and Triple H, and then of course you get Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock again in the main event for the second time, which I feel like is the best match of their trilogy. And then finally, for my number 1 is WrestleMania 31. You get Daniel Bryan winning the ladder match for the Intercontinental Championship. Randy Orton defeats Seth Rollins in a really good match. You get Triple H and Sting, which was a fantasy match for me. I wish Sting would have went over, but I had a lot of fun seeing the guys from DX and the NWO come down. There was a lot of nostalgia in it for me. You get John Cena and Rusev, where Rusev comes out on the tank, and that entrance is just amazing. You get two of my favorites with The Undertaker and Bray Wyatt, and then, of course, you get Seth Rollins pulling off the heist of the century in the main event of WrestleMania.
Wow. And I will say, before we get into Josh's and before we get into mine, 3 of those Manias are in my top 5. So we are one and the same here. Josh, let's hear your top 5 personal favorite WrestleManias. However you want. 5 to 1, chronological, reverse chronological. It's the juice box. Do whatever the hell you want.
This might sound like a broken record, but I'm going to go from 5 through 1. Number 5 is going to be WrestleMania 10 because of Owen versus Brett, Yokozuna versus Lex Luger for the title, Razor versus HBK, in the night tops off with the Brett versus Yokozuna for the WWE title. I like the whole setup where both men who were competing for the title had to be in 2 matches for in that same night. Number 4 is going to be WrestleMania 30, like Donnie said, Bryan versus Triple H, Lesnar breaking the streak, Cena versus Wyatt in a great build up, and then the night tops off with Bryan winning the title in the triple threat. Number 3 is going to be WrestleMania 19. It's probably the most stacked card in terms of like Hall of Famers. I think almost every single person on the card is going to get into the WWE Hall of Fame someday or is already in. You had Rock Austin 3, HBK versus Jericho, Lesnar versus Angle in a Wrestling Classic, and also Hogan versus McMahon. Even though it wasn't the greatest match, it was still cool to like see this feud finally happen, which took 20 years to essentially accumulate. Number 2 is going to be WrestleMania 31. I love the Rollins versus Orton match where Orton took the curb stomp and reversed into an RKO. The IC ladder match with Bryan was very good. I loved Rusev coming out in that tank, and you had the whole Russia versus America gimmick with Rusev versus Cena for the U.S. title. Triple H versus Sting. I loved how DX and NWO all interfered or came out during the match. And also Wyatt versus Undertaker. I love the whole feud between 2 like paranormal dark characters. My only complaint about that match was I kind of wish it was a little bit more darker out for their entrances. I think that would have been 10 times cooler. And the night tops off with Rollins cashing in during the main event, during the heist of the century. And number 1 is going to be WrestleMania 17. It's definitely the top WrestleMania of all time. Rock versus Stone Cold 2 was probably at their apex. This is the high water mark of professional wrestling, in my opinion. It doesn't really get much better than this. I loved the Stone Cold at the time. I loved the Stone Cold turn at the end of the night, but it really didn't work out in the long term for that. TLC 2, like I said, is probably the best WrestleMania match of all time. The Legends Battle Royale was really cool. Triple H versus Undertaker 1, which kind of gets overlooked now because of their matches at 27 and definitely at 28. And Angle versus Benoit was also a very good match.
Wow. Yeah. It's funny. And again, a couple of those are going to be in my particular top 5. So far, we have gone through 10. We've announced 10, 17, 19, 21, 30, and 31. So 6 different WrestleManias over the course of 2 people and 10 particular choices. So I think we're only going to add 2 more additional to make it 8 specific different WrestleManias that are in this top 5. and I'm going to go chronologically, and then you guys can say what you would like about the ones I chose. But I'm going to go chronologically. And I have different perspectives on this for one reason or another. So let's just kick it off. WrestleMania 3. This pay-per-view I've seen hundreds of times. I want to say I have a clamshell VHS case for this. I've watched it numerous times. Anytime I got to see it, I had an earlier VHS copy as well. I had always heard about Andre Hogan and wanted to see the spectacle of it. I have since seen the hard camera without commentary cut of that match. It's the most important match in the history of pro wrestling. I don't think this show or WrestleMania 40 happens the way it does, or anything that we've been discussing today happens the way that it does without WrestleMania 3's Hogan Andre match happening. The whole show is hinged on it, and it was a huge success. It's David versus Goliath, but David's also a pretty big guy, and it was just seeing a superhero slay the dragon. Just a wonderful match of a spectacle. Steamboat and Savage, of course. You had King Kong Bundy and Hillbilly Jim with the Little Wrestlers, which is a fun moment. Adrian Adonis, Roddy Piper, Jake Roberts, Alice Cooper's involvement in the show. There's a lot of great stuff with WrestleMania 3 that I really enjoyed looking back on. And I just think it's a really important show in the grand scheme of things. Next, WrestleMania 17. I will say that even though I'm doing it chronologically, this is the greatest WrestleMania of all time. Josh said it perfectly. It's the high water mark for wrestling. I would show this pay-per-view to anybody who's never watched wrestling, or if you've watched wrestling and you're interested in what's the best, this is it. God, when Donnie was rattling it off, I'm like, yeah, but he didn't mention. Oh, no, he did. And then there's like 10 different. Gimmick Battle Royal, which is an amazing nostalgia trip that we've never really seen since. And it was the first acknowledgement of nostalgia. It was a week after WCW got purchased. So this was this is why we bought WCW and why they didn't buy us. Vince versus Shane in a street fight. Insane. Angle, Benoit, technical masterpiece. Taker, Triple H, 10 years before their back-to-back crazy great matches. At Mania's 27 and 28. Rock Austin 2 with our Austin heel turn. My God, it just keeps going on. TLC 2, I had also, of course, mentioned arguably the greatest match in WrestleMania history, dare I say. Just the amount of intrigue in that match, top to bottom. You had the Kane, Raven, Big Show hardcore match, which was really, really fun. Just everything on this card just clicks. And it just never... It's a 3.5 hour or so show, but it doesn't ever feel that way. It feels like it's just a sprint, and every match is built off the next. The intro, even with Freddie Blassie introducing it, I get chills watching it. It's just a great show overall. Really highly recommend it if you haven't seen it. WrestleMania 21. I brought it up earlier. I had been out of wrestling since WCW got purchased. I of course watched WrestleMania 17, but I was kind of out of it a little bit after that. And 21 was the show that got me back in. Of course, Big Show Akibono is not the greatest match of all time, but you get Eddie versus Rey Mysterio to open the show. You get Kurt Angle and Shawn Michaels. Batista gets crowned and turns out to be one of the biggest stars for WWE going forward and in the movies. Same with John Cena. He defeats JBL, wins the title, becomes a huge star. Both, at the time I could realize as a teenager, this is who they're going to push. I don't know if it's going to work, but I like these guys. And looking back, it worked. Those guys are huge. And it was a really strong WrestleMania in that regard. And I think it's underrated. Randy Orton reversing a choke slam into an RKO gets overlooked as well. This is just a great show across the board. And I think an underrated WrestleMania as we've been discussing it. WrestleMania 31, arguably the greatest end to a WrestleMania. First time Money in the Bank got cashed in at the end, or at WrestleMania in general. It's the longest Money in the Bank hold for anybody. I don't think anybody's held it further than that from Money in the Bank to WrestleMania. So if Priest doesn't cash in this weekend, I'm looking at you, Josh Eisenberg. I guess we'll maybe never get it. But I mean, the lighting of this show was great. I love the atmosphere of Levi Stadium. The ladder match was nuts. Dean Ambrose getting powerbombed through a ladder. The amazing RKO, like I said, from Mania 21, another great one at 31 with the Seth Rollins RKO. The Sting Triple H match, which was amazing. DX, NWO, the Monday Night Wars in one match. Sting was never going to win. I'm just happy he got his moment, and I'm happy that he retired on his own terms recently in AEW. And then the main event, of course. I mean, how can you go off the air with something more exciting than the heist of the century? Michael Cole's arguably one of his finest moments came at the end of 30 and 31. So those are just, oh man, 31's a great show across the board. I remember watching it in college with Josh was one of them, and just a bunch of guys, and just a great show, a great time for wrestling at the time. And then this one is the last one I'll mention. I put it in chronological order, and it's WrestleMania 32. And it's not because it was such a great WrestleMania. In fact, I think it's one of the lesser WrestleManias of the whole 39 up to this point. However, this is the WrestleMania that I got to see in person for the first time. And this was a bucket list item for me. I had kind of wanted to do that for a while and never got the chance to. And out of a year after graduating college, I was wanting to do something and travel and explore the world. And WrestleMania in Texas seemed to be a really cool thing to try to make happen, and I made it happen. I saved money working a terrible retail job with minimal hours, and I made it happen. But I had a great weekend. Just the weekend in general was just amazing. I got to see Shinsuke and Sami Zayn at NXT that weekend. It really just elevated the whole weekend. You had a great ladder match for the IC title. Zack Ryder won, even though he lost the title the next night. AJ Styles and Jericho had a fun match in AJ's WrestleMania debut. You had The Rock winning a 6-second match against Eric Rowan, which was a fun little segment, but looking back, man, I don't know how that we went from that until his recent interactions leading up to this weekend's WrestleMania. Charlotte, Becky, Sasha, triple threat for the women's champion, the inaugural WWE Women's Champion, a new title. This was one hell of a match. Charlotte gets the win. So happy to see that match really transform the women's evolution and revolution into where it is today. That's when you really started seeing some NXT women come up, be on the main roster, and show what they were capable of. Roman Reigns and Triple H was not great. We all knew what was going to happen, and this was really the beginning of Roman Reigns just not being looked at fondly. I know Royal Rumble 2015 and 31, WrestleMania 31 were the start of that, but Mania 32, everybody was fed up. But the other thing I will mention, Undertaker, Shane McMahon randomly came back to WWE, and I was thrilled that I could see him in a Hell in a Cell. Between the two, we all knew what was going to happen, and Shane got up on the top of the cell, dove off, and missed. One hell of a spectacle. So happy to see it live. It just this Mania means a lot to me, so that's why I put it is in my top 5 favorite WrestleManias of all time. So overall, we have listed Manias 3, 10, 17, 19, 21, 31, and 32, which is just interesting that we've only selected so many unique ones out of the 39 thus far. Donnie, Josh, what are your thoughts on my particular Manias 3, 17, 21, 31, and 32?
I get why you picked 32 since it was your first Mania. I know WrestleMania 33 has a special place in my heart because that was my first WrestleMania. For 33, I vividly remember the Hardys coming back and Roman Reigns defeating The Undertaker during that WrestleMania. So I totally get why you would pick 32.
Donnie, go ahead. What are your thoughts on my choices before we head on out of here?
I'm glad that both you guys got WrestleMania 3 and WrestleMania 10 in your list because I really struggled with not putting them in mine. So it's glad to see somebody giving them their comeuppance. Correct me if I'm wrong. I just want to ask a quick question. We watched. It's ironic that we have all WrestleMania 31 in our list because we watched WrestleMania 31 at the theater in Cal, did we not?
Yes, we did.
That is the birthplace of Triple Threat Theater, apropos in a theater.
Wow, you know what? That's genius. I knew we watched it at the theater, but I didn't know you were there. I can't believe I didn't recall you being there.
I was there because I got scorched for wanting Roman Reigns to go over in the main event while everybody else wanted Seth Rollins to cash in and win the title with the Money in the Bank briefcase.
Wow, I can't believe that is very apropos, and it is Triple Threat Theater. It's almost like this was meant to be. Josh, I didn't even put that together, man.
All I'm saying is that during WrestleMania 31, Juice promised he'd do something if Seth Rollins catches in, and he has yet to do what he promised to do.
I made a very erratic, hyperbolic assumption. If this were to happen, I would do something pretty crazy, and it did. Seth Rollins did cash in. Maybe one day I'll do it, but when I'm incontinent and I can't control those types of things in my body anymore. But until then, I don't know if we'll see that live, but I'm glad that you recall that so we could air it out here on the Juice Box.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but did someone not get kicked out of J. Cole's the night before for getting super kicked into the pinball table?
That was Juice and our friend Taylor.
I didn't get kicked out. I sold it, and that because I sold it, he got kicked out.
Oh God!
He kicked me, and I flew into the machine, and they were like, "Get this guy out of here! He just murdered this kid."
One last thing for me, I'm gonna go ahead and propose this now, since WrestleMania 17 was also in all three of our lists.
Yeah.
And a very important moment in time comes up after WrestleMania 17, as you mentioned a couple times now, Juice, with the purchase of WCW.
Yeah.
I know that we have talked about this before and have yet to do so, so I just want to put it out there for the Triple Threat Theater audience. If you would like to see us fantasy rebook a WCW invasion when they purchase WCW, let us know. We've already discussed this. We already have ideas lined up, so if that is something that you guys would like to hear from us, drop it on Twitter, drop it on Spot, wherever you can get a hold of Juice, and let us know if that's something you want to hear.
I agree. I think that's something that we definitely should tackle. Additionally, and I thought this is where you're going with, but in addition to that, at some point, I've been wanting to do this for a while. It's a two-pronged thing. I've always wanted to do like a watch-along of some sort. I don't know how we could pull that off on a Skype session, but I do think if we did what we've been talking about, which is eventually getting one day all three of us in the same room for a recording, then we could absolutely sit down and watch something and do a watch along with live commentary, which I think would be a really fun experiment. So we can discuss that, any other time. But I definitely think it's in the cards, both those things and the Invasion rebooking, because Triple Threat Theater 4 may be coming to a close right now, but Triple Threat Theater 5 will be in the works, and hopefully we'll see that next installment sometime in the spring, maybe early summer. It took us a while to finally get to Triple Threat Theater 4, but I mean, look, this is a huge episode. It's WrestleMania week. WrestleMania 40 is this weekend in Philadelphia. I know Josh Cross and myself will be there. Donnie, I know you'll be there in spirit, but this is one hell of a WrestleMania coming up. I'm glad we got to do this episode. Josh, what are your thoughts quickly before WrestleMania 40 this weekend? What are you looking forward to most?
I believe you mentioned it on the Juice Box a few weeks ago. I'm interested to see what happens in the tag team match between The Rock and Roman versus Cody and Seth, and to see what that outcome is. If it's going to be bloodline rules or if it's going to be no interference whatsoever. I'm kind of hoping the Rock and Roman win on night one, so we get bloodline rules on night two. And I'm interested to see what sort of interference from both the Bloodline and for Cody we will get. I'm hoping we see like KO. I'm hoping we see like Sammy, Seth, maybe even Cena during it. Rikishi, both Uso brothers, Solo. I'm just interested to see if it will be pure chaos during that match, so Cody can finally finish his story.
Donnie, I know you will be watching intently the WrestleMania both nights. What are you looking forward to most for the granddaddy of them all, the show of shows, the showcase of the Immortals?
Man, I'm really looking forward to this card. Like the two nights are just the main event for night one. I never thought I'd be saying that out loud. Like I didn't have that on my bingo card for this year's WrestleMania. Like Josh, I'm hoping that The Rock and Roman take night one. I struggle to see them having Roman lose on night one and night two. So I'm thinking The Rock and Roman will go over. We'll get bloodline rolls going into night two with Roman and Cody, and then The Rock will ultimately make his turn and cost Roman the championship, and that will lead us into Rock and Roman for WrestleMania 41. I think Seth Rollins and Drew McIntyre can have a hell of a match. I'm hoping, Seth isn't too banged up coming out of night one, and we get the match that I think they could put on in night two. Rhea and Becky, I'm very excited for. This is their first big one-on-one match in quite some time, and I feel like they're the two best women's wrestlers in the world right now, so I feel like that'll be really entertaining. Just a lot of good stories coming out of this year's WrestleMania, man. The ladder match, the tag ladder match, has the potential to steal the show. So, it's going to be a very good card, top to bottom.
Yeah, it looks to be a really exciting weekend of wrestling action. And as always, the Juice Box will be in attendance to cover the event. Potentially some man on the street type deals going on this weekend. I know Josh Cross will be in attendance among other former co-hosts of the Juice Box, guys coming in that have guested appearances on the Juice Box will be in attendance in Philadelphia. So there's going to be a lot of interesting audio, I'm sure, to come out of that weekend as the Juice Box takes WrestleMania in Philadelphia this weekend. So, man, this has been great. Triple Threat Theater, Volume 4, what the world is listening to, the WrestleMania special for Donnie, Josh Cross, and yours truly, Juice Springsteen. As we conclude Triple Threat Theater 4, we look forward to Triple Threat Theater Volume 5 and, of course, WrestleMania 40 this weekend. For Josh Cross, for Donnie, I'm Juice Springsteen, and I hope you guys enjoy WrestleMania this weekend and tune in next time for another edition of The Juice Box. That was The Juice Box with Juice Springsteen. Make sure to subscribe to The Juice Box wherever you listen to podcasts.